Thanks for joining me on devlog number 5 of Project GBPL. My name is Patrick Cook. I began this project as a way to explore how we can leverage 3D game simulation to help learn photography. Now, in the previous devlog, I talked about some of the capabilities of the asset called Photo Arch Mode by UMKA Apps. I believe UMKA Apps. It is it's a photo capture, a photo mode. It's a capturing asset that I purchased a license for and integrated into the project GBPL prototype. All right, now what I want to do in this devlog is talk about the assets focusing modes. So let's go on in. Let's get into the camera. All right, so I've called up the viewfinder, and now I'm going to call up the assets menu. Now, we talked about the camera type in devlog number 4. I also talked about the exposure capabilities in devlog number 4. And what I want to do in this devlog number 5 is I want to talk about these focus modes. They're actually pretty cool. Very well done. The asset, the author of the asset has done a really nice job in capturing the capability of the Unreal Engine's camera, which has a lot of different properties that enable the simulated camera to behave much like a real-world camera. So now this is not a review of the asset. The asset's fine. Did a great job. I've been modifying the assets, so some of the things that we see here are not what the asset actually delivers. But it's a prototype environment. I chose that asset because it got me close to being able to simulate a real-world camera. Now, let's talk about this focusing mode. Now, this first one here is no focus. I really don't know if a real world physical camera would ever have a situation where there was no focus at all. You either have autofocus, which the camera will take care of, or you have manual focus. So I'm not really sure if the no focus versus the manual focus is really of any value in a learning situation. I'm probably going to take that capability away. And the user, the player, the learner won't be confronted with a no focus, which I don't believe that that's what you're going to find in a real world camera. But let's talk about manual focus now. Now again, I've got my viewfinder up here, okay, and I'm just using my mouse to move it around a little bit here. All right, let's get on something here that might be interesting. Oh, here we go. All right, let's take these lamp posts here. All right, let's experiment with those. Now, I'm in manual focus. Now, this focus distance control here does give me the ability to modify the focus. All right, so that's pretty good. All right, that's pretty good. Manual focus. Let's go over here now. All right, now the manual focus is set for $9.99 or 1,000. I'm not entirely certain what that 1,000 equates to in a real world scenario. Maybe centimeters. I'm not entirely certain. But right now we'll just kind of look at it from a relative standpoint. All right. So let me get closer here so that we can really kind of test this thing. All right, so I'm in manual mode, manual focus mode, and I can throw that pretty far out by going there. Let me just look around. Everything's out of focus now. All right, so now let's put this back in. All right, close focus. If I go way out here, am I in focus out there? It's kind of hard to tell, isn't it? All right, now let's do this. Let's go into autofocus, where you will often find, you always find that your at least your modern day mirrorless and DSLRs will certainly have autofocus. If you mount a primary lens on a camera body that has autofocus capability, well, the lens, there's no motor in the lens to implement the autofocus. So, in that sense, a prime lens would kind of fall into the manual focus mode. You'd have to turn the ring in order to get your focus dialed in. But let's assume that you're working with a camera that has autofocus and the lens has a motor built in where the camera body can actually zoom in or dial in the focus. All right, so let's do the autofocus here. So with this autofocus in this asset, I should be able to point this anywhere, and the asset will manipulate the properties of the camera of the Unreal Engine, so that I achieve a reasonably close focus wherever I point it. So here, just looking at these tables here, it's reasonably good focus. All right, and if I come over here and take a close look at this this light pole here, it's in focus. So it appears that the asset is doing a really good job in maintaining focus wherever I point it. All right. All right, so I think that's pretty good. Let's try an experiment. Let's get up on this wall here. All right, good. We got some shadows and whatnot. Is that in focus? Yeah, it looks like it is. All right, now I come over here. Is this tree in focus? It is. So the autofocus is actually very responsive and doing a very good job. All right, that would be comparable to a real world camera. The difference perhaps is this, that this auto-focusing is happening very quickly with no apparent movement of the lens. Let's just go take a look at my my Sony a6000 here that I have the HDMI output being pumped into the recording. All right, so if I do this, there we go. So that was my autofocus that kicked in. My lens is set to autofocus. I'm in manual mode now. Let's just dial the ring here. Let's okay, there we go. I'm very close. Actually, I'm just looking at the screen of another computer here, just to kind of give us something to work with. All right, so there we go. So in autofocus, the camera is doing a pretty good job, but the the physical camera, what it's doing is it's essentially looking at the scene, and then does phase detection, edge detection, and then will automatically adjust the lens in order to achieve a good focus. Now back to the game. So the game is doing a good job. I should say that the photo arch mode is doing a good job in directing the Unreal Engine to implement a focus, and it's doing it very quickly with no visual artifacts such as we might see with the A6000. Okay, Now that's good. So let's just go ahead and turn off the A6000 for the moment so we can see the screen nicely. All right, so far the manual focus does a good job. All right, let's get in on our post again here. All right, let's move forward. Okay, let's get over that. Okay, so the manual focus does a good job. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and focus here like that. And then the background is reasonably in focus with a long focal length. So the manual is good. It's very realistic. The autofocus is very realistic with no visual artifacts to indicate that focusing is being achieved. All right, now next we have a function called Click Target Autofocus. It's a pretty interesting, start over on that one. All right, so next we have a Click Target Autofocus that is a function which is part of the Photo Arch Mode asset. Now, I'm not entirely certain whether or not it has relevance to a real-world camera. However, it seems to replicate the function in a real-world camera, similar to facial detection, where the camera will isolate a face or faces within the frame and then autofocus on the faces. All right? And you'll often see that you have a user selectable focus zone in some of the apps, the camera apps of mobile devices. But anyway, let's take a look here. So if I select it, all right, now what it's saying basically is that I want to be able to focus on where I point the mouse. All right, so let's take a look here. So if I point the mouse here, all right, that snapped into focus pretty good, pretty quick too. All right, now if I point the mouse over here, okay, you see how that snapped in and then this came out of focus? All right, so that seemed to work pretty good. There we go. You see how it went into focus when I moved my mouse over here and I moved my mouse? Now the background comes into focus better and the foreground goes out of focus. If I just move it over here, I'm way out in the distance here. Okay, the foreground, the post that is here on the right went out of focus. The background is in good focus. Let's move the mouse back over to the foreground. Okay, that snapped in pretty good. All right. All right, so let's see if we can get, let's see if we can position, here we go. Oh, let's try that. All right, so I'm in Click Target Autofocus mode. All right, now I need to press the V key, V as in Victor, in order to actuate the pointing. All right, so I just press the V key. All right, and I'm focusing here. Now I'm going to move my mouse and focus on the background. You see how the foreground went a little bit out of focus. All right, and I'm going to go way out here. Foreground's in pretty much out of focus. All right, now let's move to the foreground. That comes into focus. Pretty good, very good, very good. So let's get back into let's get out of the mode and get back into our menu. So I'm not entirely certain that this Click Target Autofocus has really got a role as a learning situation. It might actually work pretty good if the box were created that would replicate how a camera might do facial recognition. But again, what I'm trying to do here in this devlog is to determine whether or not the focus mode capabilities are accurately represent the real world physical camera, and they do. And I'm also trying to determine whether or not certain functions are going to be kept or if they're relevant to a learning scenario. The no focus, again, I don't really see the point in a learning scenario. All right. Manual focus, most certainly. You're always going to have a situation where your focus of a physical camera would go into manual. Many interesting effects can be implemented that way. All right, and this behaves pretty close. And then, of course, the autofocus, where the asset is implementing and adjusting the properties through the various blueprint logic, and is actually doing a pretty good job and a very rapid job without the visual attributes of a camera hunting for a particular focal point. So that's good. So I'm very happy with the focus capabilities of the asset, the photo arch mode asset. Again, this is not a review of that asset. The author did a very good job of the asset. I am more interested in whether or not the asset represents a good simulation of a real world camera, and it does. And of course, the whole objective of having a good real world camera simulation is that the user is able to properly learn photography and be able to apply what's learned in the simulated environment to a real world camera. All right, so that's enough for this devlog. Thanks for joining me, as always. Appreciate it. Hey, get involved. Come on up to the Discord server, which is named Project GBPL. Join in the conversation. Help move this project forward. All right, I appreciate it. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.